Hey, friends of the earth, this is Waylon. I'm coming to you live from home, and I'm going to talk with a dear friend of mine, Brandilyn Tebo, who also writes on Elephant Journal. And she's a lovely, decent, kind, caring human being and vegan and kind of a spiritual retreat leader and teacher. And she wanted to do a conversation about the coronavirus. So it's her show. I just work here. And as soon as she requests to be on, Jay, everyone joining, please say where in the world you're from. And please don't mention how tired I look or how tired I feel, which is exactly and precisely as tired as I look. And yeah, just say where in the world you're from and maybe how you're doing. How is the coronavirus, the pandemic, the slowing down of this society, this world, this retreat, enforced retreat, this stay-at-home order. How is it treating you? How's it going? So we got India in the house. Where is everyone from? Hey, Make New. I think I know you. Sorry, I'm on a little platform here. As soon as I see you, Brandy, I will add you. Hey, Halifax, yeah. Denmark, we got an Aussie, Boston, Virgin Islands, or you're just saying the word virgins for fun. It's always a fun word to say. Where's Brandy? We got Hawaii. We got Spain, but living in the UK. We got Golden, Colorado. We got Buongiorno from Italy, getting slightly better. Good to hear. I know it's been brutal. New Jersey, Singapore, Philippines, Spain. Oh, we already got you. Connecticut. Where's Brandy? England, Greece, Australia, Miami, Monterrey, Mexico, Pakistan, Singapore, Germany, Singapore, Austria. Oh, there's Brandy. All right, here we go. So this is her show, just a reminder. I'm going to set up a little better as she joins. North Boulder, hello.
Damn, that's
Hey,
a lot
Will.
of places.
What's that?
That's a lot of places.
I know, it's exciting. Ohio, Capitola. Anyway, this is your show. I just work here. I just live here.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brandy. You look lovely.
Oh, thank you.
No one ever says I look lovely. I just like to complain.
I'm so sorry. You do look lovely. You just look lovely all the time that it would be so repetitive for us to say every single time we see you.
That's totally it.
Yeah.
I know it.
How are you? How are you doing during all of this? How has this affected you?
Let me turn this up a little bit. Either you're quiet or I'm shy.
Oh.
Okay, that's probably better. How am I doing in the coronavirus? Well, to be polite, how are you doing in this quarantine first?
Oh, but I'll ask you first. Okay. I'm doing well. I'm actually busier than ever right now. Can you not hear me very well?
It's like a little echo or something.
Here, let me put on headphones.
We got Finland. I'll just say where people are from while we're waiting. Someone says, I look lovely. Thank you. I always like to beg for compliments. Panama, Venezuela, Vietnam, Montana, Berlin, Dubai, Missouri, South Carolina. I think we got most of y'all. Not doing well in Minnesota. Yeah, so we're going to have a real talk about how is this quarantine. We got Doozer in North Boulder.
All right.
It took the international quarantine to ground Doozer. Many of us. So I'll go first, but I'll be brief. I think I'm a sort of political person, as you know. I like activism, and I think I can't help but think that if we ever needed an international situation to show the stark black and white divide between the privileged and the not so privileged, for people like me who haven't lost their jobs and are staying at home, you know, my problem is like, do I want to eat oatmeal again? You know, the water works, the electricity works, the Wi-Fi works, my phone works. I have community. I get to go walk with people. I'm doing 6-minute exercise videos with the New York Times. I'm loving it, frankly. I'm super social. I don't get to go to cafes or support my local restaurants or bookshops, and some of that makes me sad. But overall, I'm appreciating just being at home, being with my dog, and just a very simple life. And I'm working too much. Um, but I think for people who are losing their jobs, I just did an interview with some restaurateurs yesterday. A lot of people are, I grew up with a mom who didn't know how to pay for food or didn't know how to pay our mortgage, and that stress is makes you old fast. So I'm freaked out, and I'm honestly very, very angry with our president and our leadership, or lack thereof, and the dissembling and the lying and the foot dragging. And I'm sick of the kind of greed and exploitation that we're seeing in this world. So I'm good, but I think if you're not concerned about how our sisters and brothers are doing, you're missing out right now.
Yeah. So of everything that's being illuminated right now, can you hear me better or is it still weird?
Perfect.
You can hear me better. Okay, great. Of everything that's being illuminated right now, the class disparity and how poorly we treat the people who our country is depending on and don't give them healthcare even though we need them in the middle of this crisis, everything that's being illuminated, what of that do you think is actually going to cause sustainable change in the long run?
Well, one little point is, when I grew up, the American dream, what made America so special for all of its faults, was this notion that you could grow up poor, you could grow up being a minority, you could grow up without advantages. And the American dream was that based on merit, based on hard work, you could make more money, you could, get a white picket fence and have some children and have a, middle class, good life. And obviously a lot of that is a dream, right? We didn't have healthcare. We didn't have that social safety net, and we still don't, as you mentioned. But I think that dream has been co-opted to be about greed. People think the American dream is about having a Maserati parked out front. It's not. It's about being able to care for and provide for your family and basically decent education. And I grew up super poor. I grew up, looking like I have privilege, which is a huge privilege. And I had safe streets and education. So I had a lot of privilege, but I also had a lot of lack of privilege. My single mom worked her butt off, 2 jobs, never made more than $12K a year. And because of good education, I was able to rise. And I think that's the American dream. So I think we need to return to that. And I think Bernie fought hard for that. And I think, he's going to continue to fight hard. He's going to continue to fight hard for that with the platform, as he did with Hillary, so that Biden has that platform. But I really think if people don't come out of this ready to vote, and I like Biden, and Bernie likes Biden, I think it's time for us to unite and really defeat this guy. He's not a Republican. Trump is a party of one. He's only a fan of himself. And it's time to fart hard, as he says. We need to fart tonight together, all of us. One fart together. Just make sure the windows are open. There's a breeze. Because, as Biden has said many times, we can handle barely 4 years of Trump turning the EPA into something that destroys our environment. Trump literally used the coronavirus as cover to allow companies to pollute as much as they want. And that's not polluting out there. That's polluting us, our farms, our food, So anyway, I don't think we're going to change. I think everyone who's watching this, is going to fly when they want to fly. If they can fly, they're going to drive to go hike, which is a pet peeve of mine. Why do people drive to go to the gym? Why do people drive to go hike? You're driving to go see nature while destroying nature. Why do you drive to the grocery store? Like, if you don't bike and walk and take public transport, obviously if you're differently abled, if you have some situation where you need to drive and you can, you should. But we are destroying this earth through our consumption. Why are we supporting Amazon when we can support local? We have to make real changes if we want to change.
Yeah.
Sorry, Deb. I haven't met anyone, so I'm probably ranting a bit much.
No, I love it. I love all of your rants. So, unfortunately, when a country goes through a crisis, they tend to be more bonded to their leader than ever, right? no matter how that leader actually led. It's just trauma bonding that happens. So do you think that coronavirus is going to help or hurt us
Yeah,
in the next election?
yeah, I don't really agree with that. I think there's been many major challenges in this country and other countries where the leaders have been held responsible for their failures. I think if you remember in 1929, there were Hoovervilles all over the United States. Hoovervilles were named after President Hoover. They were shanty towns. They were homeless people who had previously been lower class, middle class, even upper class, who suddenly were living in cardboard tin shacks. And they were named after the president. We have to hold Trump responsible, not for the pandemic, not for the coronavirus, it's not his fault, but for the response to it. He literally just fired the guy who was in charge of making sure that the billions of dollars of our money would be fairly distributed. Now, I know Republicans care about fiscal responsibility. Why is this okay? It's not. We want the money dispersed in the way it was intended to, not to huge corporations or to Trump companies or Trump friends. We want this done in a way that benefits our economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you don't think that we're trauma bonded to him?
I think some people see him ranting and raving. He's a big man. I think historically we like big white men leading us. We're just used to that. We see that in movies. So when he's up there being angry and being blah blah blah, and it's about fighting the coronavirus every day, people say, oh, he must be leading the response. But really, he's standing in the way of our response. He diluted and fired or tried to fire. He got rid of the pandemic response team. Do you know what the pandemic response team in the US, which was started by Obama, their job was to go into foreign countries whenever a pandemic was discovered and immediately study it, learn from it, and try to contain it and try to find a vaccine for it. He got rid of that. Where did this start? I mean, you and I are vegan. This started out of wildlife markets, not some weird conspiracy theory bullshit. It started wildlife markets in China, and there was no pandemic response team, thanks to President Trump.
Wow. Yeah.
And the guy takes no responsibility.
And what do you think about the fact that that's not being talked about? I mean, aside from you and I really don't hear people talking about the fact that this is the 18th infectious disease that is spread to humans from animal agriculture, and that 75% of emerging infectious diseases come from animal agriculture. Like, how is that not being talked about?
I mean, seriously, Brandy, I don't understand. I think, you know, people say people don't want to feel bad, right? I think that's a fundamental human thing. I don't want to feel blamed. It's much easier for me to rant than to take responsibility. Mm-hmm. So I think people who eat meat, all of you watching, probably most of you eat meat. And when you hear, oh, wow, you know, all the pandemics that have arisen in the last 10 years, or most of them, come out of this weird animal human coming together that is always about eating those animals. It's not about like us hanging out like in Jungle Book. So, you know, if we actually care about this planet, we have to realize climate change is 20 million times bigger than this pandemic. And it's great we're taking this pandemic seriously. It's great. But climate change is 20 million times bigger, and it'll continue 20 million times longer. And we need to take action. And part of that action is becoming vegan. We can't afford to destroy this whole world through factory farming anymore.
Guess what this week is for me? It's my 10-year vegan anniversary. And I wanted to go out to a nice vegan restaurant and celebrate, but that's okay. I'll celebrate in my home.
Yeah, you can stay home and have a romantic dinner with your boyfriend, a vegan dinner celebration, and that's even better. I think there are good things coming out, which are people are learning recipes and cooking and learning. I'm learning how to sprout food out of seeds and how to grow some greens in all my windows instead of just growing plants, you know, and we're learning to slow down and reconnect with our family. One of my staff people, she and her husband have been having a hard time, right? They have 2 kids and they have a busy life and he has a commute. Things have been hard. And this quarantine has forced them to all just live together all day long. And it's been so healing. They're communicating, they're going deeper. So there are good things. Yeah, gardening. What else is good? Everyone's saying comments. What are some good things that are happening out of this quarantine? I mean, that's human nature. Good and bad rise simultaneously. And the kind of caring and joy on your face when you talk about being vegan 10 years, that's beautiful. Kindness is beautiful, and we all need to be like that. We need to be kind.
Yeah, as a transformational coach, I'm realizing a lot of people are having massive wake ups right now, realizing that their jobs were never what they wanted to fully choose, that their relationships were never what they fully wanted to choose, that their lifestyle is out of alignment. It's like the universe has created this space for us all to go to our rooms and think about what we've done. And it's, you know, I wrote the book, The Achievement Trap. It's literally collectively we're healing out of the achievement trap.
Right. That's your book.
Yeah. We're healing our obsession with needing to achieve and do and be busy and be social all the time. We're having to actually be with ourselves for the first time ever for most of us.
No. Yeah. I mean, it's scary. You know, luckily we all have Netflix and we have a million things we can do to distract ourselves from boredom. But Buddhism, you know, I grew up in the Buddhist tradition, and Buddhism views boredom as a positive thing. Like, if we can make friends with boredom, you know that feeling when you're itchy and you have to move, you have to fidget, you're like, I can't be bored for 1 second. You can actually relax in that, like you're in a sauna, just relax into that. And then when you relax into boredom, you discover empathy and your heart and your joy and how you felt as a kid, you know, alive and awake to this world. And that's what we're all hiding from. So I encourage people not to just binge watch Netflix, but to like go for walks, garden, you know, do whatever you can to reconnect with your life while you got it.
Yeah, so that's what's on the other side of boredom, huh? That childlike sense of awe and play.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you're hiding from boredom, you want entertainment. So everything's itchy. It's like fast food, you know, you want salt, sugar, grease. You don't want to actually slow down, be present with your food and actually enjoy it. And as I always say, you can have the best food in the world, but if you're not present for it, you don't taste it. So we have to actually just get present, slow down. Like when I was at Kripalu, the yoga center, they had a mindful eating guide, and there's like 6 steps, which I could go through quickly, which for me as a speedy eater, I'm like, I love nachos because I'm like, wow. So it's relax. So you actually breathe before you eat. When you get excited, then you breathe twice, 2 good breaths. Then you think about gratitude. It can be for 1 second. Who made this lettuce? Who grew this lettuce? Who shipped it? Who put it on the shelves? Who got it to the farmer's market? Who's behind this? And gratitude for nature itself, right? And then appreciation. You actually look at it. When you actually look at your food, you're like, wow, that is pretty beautiful, even if it's simple. And if it's not beautiful, maybe question why you're eating, you know, fake food. And then you smell, which is a weird one if you're in public, but no one's in public. Smell.
Yeah.
And then you chew. If you actually pay attention to chewing without just swallowing, like rushing, it's so yummy. It's like 20 million times yummier. And then pause before you run off to the next thing. And that's it.
Yeah. I actually wait until my heart feels that opening of gratitude, right? Until I feel that like, oh my God, I get to eat this food. Like I get to enjoy this meal right now. And I wait until I like salivate and my body's like, yes, I can't wait for this. It makes such a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, you're way ahead of me. I'm like remedial on this stuff.
Yeah, it makes the food taste better. They've actually done studies that show that our body absorbs the nutrients better when we wait until we really want it, when we like salivate and are ready to actually take it into our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can do that for all of our lives instead of just rushing through everything.
Right. So what are other Buddhist perspectives on what's happening right now? Like what is the Buddhist do during quarantine?
Well, I wrote about this on our Instagram post, but you know, retreat is a traditional thing to do every now and again in Buddhism, and retreat is often solitary. Sometimes you do a group retreat, but often just going alone to a cabin in the woods and meditating and studying and going for walks and just no entertainment, no newspapers, no phone, no magazines, no TV, just really experiencing this life fully. And it sounds boring from the outside in, from oh, some people are getting a little echo or something when you talk. If you want to do headphones, I don't know. But I think just experiencing the rhythms of life, whether it's Robert Frost or any, Wendell Berry, any poet you like, those rhythms of basic life are so rich and so beautiful, and not rich in the money sense, but rich in the sense of all of us can enjoy that. And yeah, I mean, we began Shah Dubai. You may have been late. We began by talking about those who are not privileged, who are going through not being able to pay their rent, not being able to pay their mortgage. There's no way you could ignore that. So I completely agree with you. And we've written about that. Elephant has millions of readers a month. We've written about that again and again and again. Our writers are our readers. So instead of like throwing stones at a glass house, you're welcome to write about that on Elephant. And we need to amplify you. I don't disagree with you. We need to make sure people feel empathy, and not just feel empathy, but action. Love is not passive. Love has to be active, because I began by talking about my mom. She couldn't pay for mortgage or food, and I would see her stressed out and crying and losing our house. And we didn't have a car. We didn't have a TV growing up. And yet we had a very beautiful life. But part of that beauty was crazy amount of stress and heartbreak. And I remember watching her cry, So, millions and millions of people are going through that. And we need to make resources available in terms of getting unemployment urgently, in terms of getting rent and mortgage relief urgently. This has to happen. So if you want to write on Elephant, sorry to bogart your video here, Brandy, but I want to address that criticism that kept coming up. elephantjournal.com/post, and we will feature your words to 10 million Facebook fans. I appreciate your empathy. And yeah, this is not a time, we talked about that split, Brandy and I. So some people are like, oh, I need to figure out recipes, and how do I talk with my spouse who I don't get along with, and how do I homeschool my children? That's a real stress and a real joy and a challenge. But then there's other people who don't, many of our sisters and brothers, not people out there, just dear people in our community and everywhere, who don't even know how to make it through the day. And, my house, the house I'm in right now, was in foreclosure, I think, 7 years ago. And the stress and the depression I woke up with every morning, they would put stickers on my front door saying, you're out of this house, you're getting foreclosed on. That depression and stress, I think it's when I started losing my hair. So, is brutal. So, kudos to you and anyone who cares about empathy. And Brandy cares about empathy and was talking about that in terms of veganism. So we can't just be empathetic for our sisters and brothers in an active way. We have to do that for animals, for this whole planet, because climate change is going to destroy everything we love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you say that this virus, and I can't tell if my headphones make it better or worse. Am I more echoey now or less?
It's good for me.
It's
Maybe
good for you?
Can say how it's working.
Yeah. Can you all hear me okay? So what do you think about karma? Like, when we think about the fact that this disease came from animal agriculture, and that pretty much every infectious disease that comes to humans comes from inhumane conditions treating animals, what does the Buddhist think about karma?
Well, karma isn't a Judeo-Christian kind of Catholic notion where, like, you've been bad, you're going to get punished. That's not what karma is. Karma is cause and effect. Mm-hmm. So on a very simple level, this is karma. There was a cause, which was these wildlife markets. You don't want to be mixing pangolins who have been smuggled all over the world, these cute little like dinosaur-looking things. They think it came from pangolins. Some think it came from a bat. But pangolin seems to be the most common that scientists are thinking. But whatever it did, they think it came from these crazy unregulated wildlife markets. But we do the same thing here. We love to hate on the Chinese, some of us, and maybe we should hate on cruelty in China. But we do the same thing here. I challenge anyone who eats nacho cheese or a nice burger to go to the factory farm that came from. I think people are still getting feedback. I don't really know what to do. So we'll just do our best. I can hear you fine. I think it's fine for most folks, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So given that, quarantine is really a privilege, there are people all around the world who can't even quarantine right now, like in shanty towns all over India. And washing our hands is a privilege. Being able to be 6 foot distance from other people is a privilege. So many people in the world aren't actually able to do that given the conditions of their lives. What do we do? Like, love is action. What actions can we take right now?
Well, I hate to be a one note band, but a lot of those things are privileges, as you said. Privilege isn't something you should be ashamed about. Privilege is something you want to share equally. So, you can enjoy privilege, but you have to want to share it first. Just like any good teacher, or any good parent, or any good lover, you want to share naturally anything. When you see a flower, you're like, look at that flower. You want to share it. And washing hands didn't used to be a privilege as much. There used to be a thing called commonwealth, called society, where we wanted to invest in the greater good. And then all these libertarians and Republicans came along. Republicans famously described government as, you want to make government small enough, they said, that you can strangle it in the bathtub. Really a famous Republican quote. If you're making analogies to making something small enough that you can strangle it in the bathtub, you need to question who you are. So it used to be all over this country, and I'm not idealizing past. We have racism in our past, but we had drinking fountains everywhere. Every drinking fountain means that you don't need a plastic water bottle. So we need a return. This is a minor thing, but we need a return of drinking fountains all over every mall, every downtown, every airport. We are seeing more and more in airports and parks, at least in Colorado. But and those drinking fountains need to include a little soap dispenser where you can wash your hands. And that needs to be everywhere. And the water needs to be filtered, which is another problem, clean water for everybody. But yeah, privilege is something that needs to be shared. Otherwise it curdles. It's sort of like, there's probably some legend about that, right? Like if you're greedy, you can't even enjoy your own gold. Like you can't eat your gold. You can't really enjoy being rich if you're behind a gated community. Like true joy is community. True wealth is community. When we get to go to farmers market, when it reopens, that's true wealth. That's true joy. Whether you're introverted or extroverted, there's a genuine sense of people caring.
And is there something that we can do on a daily basis right now that'll make a difference to spread that joy and community?
Oh, you're so good. I just love that question. I mean, I think everyone should have their own answer, but for me, it's beginning the day with meditating, dedicating the merit to be of benefit to everybody. So from the first moment you wake up, you have a brief moment of peace when you're waking up, and then all your fear, or your to-do lists, or your busyness, or your responsibilities, or your songs in your head, your busyness comes back. If you can just sit with a good posture and meditate in that moment, find your breath, return your attention to your breath, and dedicate the whole point of your day to everybody, not just yourself, that changes your approach to the whole day. And you can go through the day from a point of view of sanity and peace and openness, instead of kind of, aggression and me, which is kind of what we see with our president, right? It's all about sort of blaming or victimization. Everyone's against him and everyone's at fault, but he's never at fault, and he's never for anyone else. And then if you can close the whole day in that same way, just a couple minutes of meditation, for me, that's the basis of everything.
How many minutes a day is meditation? How many minutes a day do you need to meditate in order for it to make an actual difference in your day, do you think?
To start, Pema Chodron and many teachers will say, to start, if you meditate 5 minutes, that's fantastic. I mean, honestly, if you meditate for 2 minutes, that's fantastic. At some point, some group meditation or meditation programs or a retreat, going deeper is helpful. So you have this kind of, it's a craft, right? So you have to practice. But even a couple minutes can be a huge road bump in the speediness of your ego and your fear.
Oh. One of the perspectives that I love to look from is the perspective that I'm 100% responsible for everything. And this isn't the truth, right? This is responsibility is very different from blame and guilt. It's just a perspective that gives us power. So if every person in the world were to look from that perspective, I'm 100% responsible for this world, then that would call us forth powerfully into action. And we all would be being the change we wish to see in the world, acting accordingly. Yeah. So I think that helps answer that question. What can we do every day? Well, if I'm 100% responsible for all of the issues that I'm concerned about, then what actions would I take? Okay, let me take those actions.
Yeah, I barely even understand that. So I get being responsible for society and stuff, but we all have those people in our lives who are kind of drive us nuts, right? And from a Buddhist perspective, those can be our greatest teachers. But from that point of view of what you're saying, the responsibility, how am I responsible for their hate or their actions? How do you do that?
It's from the perspective that we're all one. So anything that exists in anybody else also exists within me. And especially if I'm having a reaction or a contraction to somebody else's way of being, that likely means that there's some seed of that within myself that I haven't accepted. So they're mirroring back to me something that exists within me. So rather than hating or judging them, which is really just me hating or judging myself, instead, let me look for that place within me that is the same as them, and let me love that by taking 100% responsibility for it. It's like, have you heard of the Ho'oponopono Hawaiian healing meditation? So it's that, right? Like the guy went into this psych ward and meditated on every single person's file. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And took full responsibility for all of the pain that that individual felt. And it made a massive difference in the way that they were able to run this psych ward, which I don't know how that actually works. But there's all this literature about that experiment, which I think is really promising and gives us a lot of hope.
Yeah, you actually, I think I'd been told about it before, but you actually kind of explained it to me. I remember how do you say it again?
Ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono in when we were sitting in Cafe Gratitude in Venice. We're talking about someone very kind of malevolent in my life, and I was like, how do I deal with that? And it is this kind of personal responsibility. Like, it's my problem, basically. If there's anything going on there, I just have to breathe it in and deal with it in myself and care about this person. And and like you said, it's not necessarily actually my fault. You don't have to be a victim. You don't have to blame the victim, but you do want to learn from it.
My mom always said growing up that those who are least lovable are those who need love the most. Yeah. So I like to imagine that when anybody mean or angry or aggressive or selfish comes into my life, they're like being attracted to me because they see that I can love those parts of them that they don't love about themselves. So it's like almost this honor of like, oh wow, you came to me so that I can love that aspect within you and therefore love myself more deeply, right? Because anytime we have a reaction to someone, anytime we're in resistance, that means that there's something unhealed within us. There's some aspect that we're not willing to love within ourselves. So it's an opportunity to love that, to accept that, to forgive that, to understand that, to be compassionate with that aspect of the universal self.
Yeah, I like that in terms of personal relations. I think there's a level of like, when I look at President Trump or people in power, these polluting corporations, or there's a level of like, it's okay to call out corruption. It's okay to call out abuse, not out of hate. Like hate won't get us there. Martin Luther King Jr. said that. I side with love. But love, again, is active, not passive. And you have to be willing to say, you are responsible for misusing your power,
right,
but not out of hate.
Well, and that's what the archetypal universal mother does, right? Like, what does the best mother do? Well, it reprimands bad behavior and also maintains her love for the child simultaneously, right? So it's like, I love you and this is not okay. I love you, I forgive you, and this is not acceptable. So it's that fine line, that balance of never sentencing anybody to you are a bad person. It's I understand that the truth within you is the truth within me, and that is love, and this is unacceptable, and I'm holding you accountable.
Yeah, my mom was super good at that. Generally, not perfect, but generally she like made me feel intelligent and like fundamentally good, which we all are. But in those moments of like reprimanding me, she would like, you know better. You're too kind to be like. I remember when she was teaching me, I was on a hike with some friends. We were taking these sticks and we were bashing the trees because it was fun. They were like swords, you know. We had these big swords and we're like cutting the trees down. It's super fun. And I remember her being like, "You don't want to do that. You like trees. Remember tree, you know."
Oh.
And you're like, "Oh yeah, I guess you're kind of hurting something. It's not just a video game, you know."
Yeah.
And she did that when we were all stepping on ants as well. We were like, "Ha ha, it's like a video game." And then those are huge moments when you learn, oh, it's fun killing things, or oh, I care about things. That's a huge choose your own adventure moment, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's the difference between don't do that, you are bad, versus you are good and this is bad. Right? And when
you're too good to be cruel.
Exactly. Like I see the goodness in you and it is not in alignment with what you're doing with this action. And I think we can all even, like, if you think of the person that you hate most in the world, understanding that the more we hate that person, the more we project on them, the more we sentence them to being bad, the more we put them in this box of you are bad, right? So instead of that, what if we can actually see the goodness in them and through our own awareness, love and forgive those parts of themselves and say, and this thing that you're doing is bad. This thing that you're doing is out of alignment with who you could be, with the goodness that you truly are. Like it's a whole different mindset, and it's more freeing. Like it's not fun to hate anybody. It's not fun to judge anybody. It always feels better to come from the perspective that everybody is inherently good and that people are making bad choices and that hurt people, you know, like people who have been hurt continue to hurt people. So if we continue to hurt those people, then they're going to keep hurting more people. So there has to be a break in that chain of hurt.
We've written a lot about the Me Too movement, of course, which is fantastic in some ways and troubling in other ways. It's obviously fantastic to have abuse exposed, finally, and to try to make things more equal and transparent. And what's troubling about it is often there's this sort of rush to hate and judgment.
Yeah.
And many people, including myself, have always said, look, you know, a lot of these abusers, what they have done is evil. But who they were probably abused, a lot of them, not all. So it's not an excuse, but the second you remember that abusers often were abused, you realize, oh, it's not enough to hate an abuser. What we have to want to do is end the cycle of abuse. And for us to mob scene these abusers is understandable, but it may not solve what we actually hate, which is the abuse. Like it's actually, we actually have to somehow heal and prevent abuse and create a different culture. And how are we going to do that? Through, you know, sexual assault awareness training, through abuse training for teachers and for students. I don't have all the answers, but we actually have to change societally, not just hate on people.
Right. When we come from this black or white, hi, Chris. Oh, when we come from this black and white perspective of like, there's good people and then there's bad people, then we're just looking for, well, are you a good person or are you a bad person? And I'm just going to put you in this category and then treat you accordingly.
Right.
And that's, I think, what some of the Me Too movement did, which is not entirely helpful, because what we need to do is, okay, I'm going to come from the assumption that you are good. And given that I'm assuming that you are good, what happened? What is happening in our society such that you would be led to make a choice such as this? And how can we prevent that in the future? And how can we help you to undo whatever that is that's happened in your past, or that programming that society has programmed you with, such that you think that this is okay behavior? Like, that is so much more of a productive conversation to have than there are good people and there are bad people, and we just need to kill off all the bad people in the world. It's
Right.
like, no, how is our society producing bad people, right? Like, what is the poison? What is the toxin that exists in our society in these dominant narratives that we're spreading in the way that we treat people, such that our society is producing people that are violating each other?
Yeah, and the second you allow yourself to say there's evil people, even if those evil people are kind of evil, like Harvey Weinstein, it's pretty hard not to say he's evil. But the second you get into that logic, you see like what we see with the MAGA nation, right? Where they say other is evil. You know, there's shithole countries, excuse my French, there's, you know, Mexicans are kind of evil, illegal, they call them illegals or aliens are evil. It's so easy to say other people, you know, and that leads to racism, that leads to sexism, that leads to war in its worst. It leads to things like the Holocaust, where you can say, you know, Jews are evil, gypsies are evil, homosexuals are evil, artists are evil, we're going to kill them. So that kind of evil, good versus evil logic you see in a lot of kids' movies, it ain't okay. And then there's shows or books like Harry Potter that show that evil people actually are coming from a complex, hurt place, and there's some sense of complexity, which you even saw in Schindler's List. And that's like, I just interviewed these two restaurateurs yesterday who a lot of people were saying were evil because, you know, they've laid off 500 employees and blah blah blah. So I asked them all these questions. You talk with them, you realize very quickly, like, yeah, maybe some mistakes are made, maybe some bad things are happening, some painful things are happening, a lot of people are laid off, but they're not evil. They're actually in some ways really doing better than most owners. And, you know, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why I and you can either think that this is true or you can think that it's a metaphor. But I believe that the world is a mirror. It's reflecting me back to me. And when I see that, then that empowers me to look from that perspective of I'm 100% responsible. So
it's not a mirror in the sense of like Instagram selfies. It's not a mirror in the sense of Donald Trump. Like, it's not a mirror in the sense of vanity.
No.
It's a mirror in the sense of like,
it's reflecting me back to me. Yeah.
But it's reflecting your actions or your behavior or your intent, your heart back to you.
Exactly. Yeah. I like to play the game of thinking, okay, if the consciousness that I am were born into that person's life and that person's circumstances, what would have had to happen for me to have done that same thing that they did? Like, if the consciousness that I am were born into the body of Harvey Weinstein, what would have had to have happened? What social conditioning would I have needed to have received? What were the understandings that I would have needed to have made about the world such that I would have done the same thing?
And that's empathy. I mean, a lot of us think of empathy as pity, right? Having empathy for someone in a worse situation than you. But empathy is also having empathy for, like, what the Rolling Stones call it, sympathy for the devil.
Yeah.
I want to get this quote that's about what you just said. We shared it early on in the pandemic. It'll just take me a second to find.
Yeah, well, empathy is a lot about using your imagination. Using your imagination to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and really imagine what that would be like.
Yeah, here. Can I read this quote?
Oh, please.
So it's not by me. It's just a quote we shared. To those who now have 28 packages of pasta, to those who are searching the black market for hand sanitizer, to those who walk around with a face mask, and to those who are planning to flee with their kids out of a corona-infected area, never again look down on people who flee from war and famine.
Yeah. Oh, I just got chills everywhere. Yeah.
It's so easy to blame even powerless, penniless, hungry moms with their kids. Oh, why are they trying to get into our country, steal our jobs? And then, you know, you realize you would do the exact same thing. You run into Canada or wherever you thought was safe. The first second you thought that might save or protect your children.
Yeah. Can I read you a post that I wrote the other day? We're hitting the animal activism hard on this call. So, if you hate being cooped up in your home, imagine being a breeding pig in the pork industry. You are a curious, intelligent, smarter than any other domestic animal, including dogs, and sentient creature who is forcefully impregnated and then confined in a gestation crate where you can't even turn around or lie down comfortably for months on end while you are pregnant. You live in your own excrement and therefore develop respiratory disease from breathing in such high levels of ammonia day in and day out. Your intense boredom and frustration leads you to neurotic behavior, like constantly chewing with an empty mouth and chewing on the bars of your crate, creating pus-filled sores in your mouth. Shortly before your piglets are born, you are moved to a farrowing crate where your piglets will be nursed. The crates are meant to separate you from your piglets to avoid crushing them. They are restrictive to the point that you can only stand and lie down. You cannot even turn around to see your piglets. At 17 to 20 days old, your piglets are being taken away from you and undergo a series of mutilations without any sort of pain relief. The piglets spend the next 6 months of their lives confined to tiny pens, surrounded by tens of thousands of other highly stressed out pigs until they reach market weight, and then they are put in a truck, not fed or given water for days until they are brutally slaughtered. As soon as your piglets are weaned, you are once again raped, put back into your restrictive gestation crate to do it all over again. This cycle continues at an average of 2.5 litters per year until you are considered spent and you are sent to slaughter yourself. Remember, coronavirus, SARS, Ebola, MERS, bird flu, and swine flu came from humans eating animals. About 60% of all human diseases and 75% of all emerging infectious diseases come from livestock. Coronavirus is just one of the many viruses and diseases that factory farm animals have to live with every single day. If this isn't teaching us empathy, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out that what you just read are words. Like, if you go actually see a pig mom, all of that is true, and all of that is in the present moment, meaning it doesn't wrap up after 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. You read for 30 seconds. It goes on for years. And I've seen this even in permaculture farms in Costa Rica, you know, even in the best conditions in the whole world. And, you know, I think that quote you read spent 4 words on going to slaughter. Going to a slaughterhouse, you're freezing or you're burning with heat, you're packed in, you don't have food, you don't have water, you know what's happening, you know something crazy and fearful and devastating is happening. No. And then you're in a slaughterhouse where you're literally pushed by stainless steel machines, basically, into blades. And you know what's happening because you've seen who's immediately in front of you. You see cows terrified trying to jump out. And then, you know, at the end of the day, we're like, bacon. I know. I always say, like, if I took a knife, if I took my dog, Redford, a lot of people know my dog, Redford, put him on the table, jammed a knife into his brain, cut off his fur, that would take a while, right? It's kind of messy. There's blood everywhere. You know, diced him up or however that works, and then put him on a barbecue. Like, my friends would be, like, stunned. They would have called the police within 5 seconds. They would be like, what the? You know, that's murder. But we're doing this to billions of animals a year, and it's costing us. This isn't just some like, oh, why don't you love the animals, hippies? This is costing us and our planet. And, you know, we have the nerve to think that we're animal lovers because we spend $2 billion a year on pets and their cute little outfits while eating pigs.
Yeah, it's absolutely, you don't get to call yourself an animal lover if you eat meat. No. Well, or just the cog, you can, it's just very, very inconsistent. And there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on there.
Yeah, and I'm 200 pounds, you know, I exercise all the time. I bike, I climb, I do whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm vegan, you know, it's like, it's no problem. Watch Game Changers on Netflix. It's no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting, the comments unnecessarily graphic. I don't think we are graphic enough. I mean, still only 2% of the world is vegan. Clearly, the vegans of the world are not being graphic enough, because if that quote, if slaughterhouses had glass walls.
What's unnecessarily graphic is killing animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? I'd love to get your perspective on this, because it really... sometimes it just hits me where a good person, like somebody who I know is such a good person, I sit there and I watch them eat meat, and literally, like, there's the vegan inside of me, that just imagine standing up, overturning the table, screaming at the top of my lungs, and just like, "Ah!" And of course I don't. I remain very composed and I have a very civil conversation about it. And I kindly educate. And sometimes, like, the amount of anger that I feel about this issue, like, it's very Twilight Zoney. It's very bizarre to live in a world surrounded by good people, well-meaning people that, like, we know what they're complicit in, that they're actually paying for the brutal, horrendous torture and slaughter of very sentient, very intelligent creatures.
Well, that's why I like to make that totally inappropriate analogy to my dog, even though it's awful.
It's not inappropriate. That's what people are doing.
Imagine if I did that to my dog. I would be in jail. People would be like, that Waylon Lewis of Elephant, he just flipped out and murdered his dog in cold blood. And yet we're doing that casually for lunch every day.
Yeah. And
like
I love
it. It's like Black Mirror stuff. You're like a nice person. We all have great friends, people who are often kinder and more mature than us, who eat meat and fish and cheese, and it's disgusting. Talk about
It's so bizarre. And it really, like, so, and sometimes I feel like I have no outlet for it, because if a friend of mine called me and told me, wow, you know what, I just totally raped someone and it felt so good and I loved it, it was amazing. Like, oh my God, nobody would tolerate that. However, I do have friends call and say, I just ate a steak and I loved it and it was so good, it was so delicious, oh my God. And to me, in my body, I'm not saying that those things are the same. I'm saying that the way that it feels in my body when somebody talks about eating an animal and loving it feels the same as if somebody just came back bragging about, like, beating somebody up or torturing someone. It's so bizarre. I'm like, I don't know how to react to this, because my body says that I should call the police on you, right? But obviously that's not societally acceptable, because in our society,
be like, you got a problem with the burger here, man?
yes.
Don't waste time. Yeah. I mean, the sad or the happy joke here is that, like, when I was in Halifax visiting my mom a year ago, there's a donut shop, and half of the donuts in it are vegan, and they're just as good and just as popular and just as sold out all the time. They're delicious. Like, I eat, people are like, what do you eat? And I'm always like, I don't know how to answer that question, because I eat
Everything.
I eat stuff all the time, and I love food, and I'm happy, I'm active, I'm like, there's no need. I understand if, like, all meat and dairy tasted good and all not that tasted bad, you'd be like, wow, that's tough. But it's not that way. So
Yeah.
It's changing fast. But I think
I'm curious.
Is what you said before. You appeal to people's best selves. You say, look, you're a caring person. You love your dog. You care about your horse or whatever. You know, let's extend that to one other animal, like squirrels. Let's start with squirrels, you know. Would it be wrong to kill that squirrel? Yeah, probably. So why is it not wrong to kill a pig? That's why I love anyone out there who has pig pets. I want to get a pig pet, because I feel like kids get so excited, everyone gets so excited, and then you learn, oh, pigs are actually kind of cool. They have personalities, and
they're smarter than dogs.
They're
as smart as a 3-year-old child.
Shh. Close your ears, Redford. I think I'm in front of Red.
I'm really curious what your response is to this, because I'm seeing in the comments people are talking about, like, well, why eat plants? Why discriminate against plants? Plants are living beings. I have my own response to this, but I'm curious what yours is, because I personally think it's the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard.
Well, plants are sentient. So I think on the one hand, like, okay, so the argument you're making is you should love and care about plants. Good. Like, you should extend your love to all sentient beings. But, you know, animals eat plants far more than humans eat plants. And plants, Amazon, etc., are cut down for animal agriculture. So if you care about plants legitimately and you're not just making an argument, then the best way to save plants, jungles, forests is to go vegan.
Yeah, I've had people tell me, well, I can't go vegan because eating soy is really unsustainable, because, like, whatever it takes to make the soy fields is really not environmentally friendly. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. And that's why I'm vegan, because 98% of soy crops go into animal agriculture
Yeah.
feed. Like that's what animal,
And also,
we
you
just
don't
have
have
to
to eat
feed
soy
them.
as a vegan. Like,
Yeah, I
when's the
don't.
last time, like, other than soy sauce, I don't really, I mean, I like proper tempeh or tofu or whatever when it's prepared well. What am I saying? You know, like Japanese cuisine.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not done well, I don't generally eat it. There's such healthy things that are yummy that you can eat.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And people who are saying, how do you have a right to kill plants? Well, I think go watch a harvest of corn, or go watch a harvest of strawberries, and then go watch 100 animals be slaughtered.
Well, but again,
And
if you
then,
actually care about plants, you're killing far more plants through animal agriculture.
right.
Far more. It takes something like 4,000% more plants to feed one animal that you're going to kill casually and eat than it takes to, you know,
Right.
if you were to eat all those plants. And, you know, generally scientists and others will agree, look, a central nervous system is a differentiating factor. I think all of us here would say, even vegans would say, okay, I'd rather kill a pig than my mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are gradients. And
Mm-hmm.
then, you know, when you look at a pig versus a corn stalk, there's a difference. And again, it's going to take 4,000% more corn to feed one pig. Anyway, we don't need to get
Into this.
it's about plants with
Mm-hmm.
people. That's just an argument. I always say, okay, you can get philosophical and argue all day long, but you're genuinely just not connecting with your heart or your care. If I killed my dog, arguments would happen. If I
Mm-hmm.
live stream killing my dog right now on this table, all arguments would happen. The only reason people are so attached to their meat and their dairy is because it tastes good. If it tasted like poop, no one would be making these arguments. So just be honest. Just say it's not taste.
Yeah.
Just be honest.
No. Yeah. Well, awesome. So what are you gonna go do when this is all over? What's like the first thing you're gonna do when everything opens up again?
I mean, my first thought was I would get on my bike and go down to my neighborhood cafe and just see some community. So we're not going to talk about vegan stuff anymore. So people can kind of jerk off in comments, but let's just get present and all get together, because community is really what this quarantine is reminding us about, whether
Mm-hmm.
we can be together physically or not. All together is what's going to help people who are in bad situations, help people who are in urgent situations, help animals, we have to do this together. So yeah, I'm going to go to my local cafe. I'm going to have a coffee for here. I'm not a fan of to-go. There's a lot of plastic to-go waste happening right now. And I'm going to tip my barista $20 for the first week, every single time, because I can and because they deserve it.
Wow. I just realized I totally had a dream last night about, like, this just came back to me when you said that, about a friend of mine walking up to me with a plastic to-go container, and she goes, "Is this okay? Is this okay?" And I was like, it feels a lot better to not ever use plastic to-go containers. And I don't know if you remember this, but I think maybe, I don't know, this was like a couple of years ago, but we ran into each other or we're hanging out or something, and I had like a plastic cup, and you looked me in the eyes and you goes, that's not okay. You're like, that's not who you are. Don't do that. You don't need to do that. Stop using to-go containers. And literally I haven't since then. And in my dream last night, I told her about that. And I did the same thing to her. And I like looked her in the eyes
Wow.
and told her that. And she was like, wow, okay.
Well, that's
And,
kind of the love you were talking about with moms. Like, if we respect each other and there's no need to like argue philosophically on Instagram or Facebook comments, we can just be straight with each other. Like, you are better than this. I do that with my own staff. Like, if they come with a to-go cup that's plastic lined, I'm like, you're drinking that outside. You can't come in with that. It's not okay.
amazing.
You love the ocean. I know these people love the ocean. They love surfing. They love whatever. We gotta use this quarantine as a dress rehearsal, as a rough draft, as a practice run for fighting climate change, because it's here and it's coming. And anyone out there who wants to have children, it's our responsibility to make sure that climate change doesn't F up all the animals and all the people and all of civilization, all of history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like that. This is a dress rehearsal.
Yeah, and it's
Let's make
not
it
all,
count.
it's not, I don't think I'm perfect. No one here is perfect. A lot of times that goes into like, oh, who are you to say that? Well, I'm just trying just like everybody else, you know? And that's all we can do. It's kind of joyful and mindful. You don't have to be perfect.